Governor Murphy signed the last budget of his term in office, putting pen to paper just before the midnight deadline Monday on a record-breaking $58.8 billion state spending plan, which he says will bring more affordability and opportunity for families in New Jersey. It includes close to $7 billion in the budget reserve, which may need to be tapped as federal lawmakers look to slash funding for social safety net programs like Medicaid. The U.S. Senate cleared the president's big, beautiful bill earlier today, and the House is expected to vote on it Wednesday. The state budget puts in full payments to the public worker pension system, the school funding formula, and property tax relief programs, but it also relies on several new taxes to pay for it. Those will hit smokers, gamblers, and people selling high-value properties. And it also includes hundreds of millions in new spending, add-ons that were tacked on in the final hours of negotiations that have drawn criticism from folks on both sides of the aisle. And as part of our Under the Dome series, our budget and finance writer John Reitmeyer joined me earlier to shed more light on what it all means. All right, John, thanks for coming in. I know you've had several long days, long nights. A lot has been made about just how big this budget is and also what's been added in that wasn't necessarily in the governor's budget proposal, and also some items that were. Can you bring us up to speed on these add-ons?
Sure. So the governor's proposal actually got bigger in mid-May. It was overlooked at the time, but when the revenue forecasts were updated, there was also some new spending added by the executive branch.
How much?
And so that moved the budget from about $58 billion to over $58.3 billion. Now we get to the end of June, and the budget grows to $58.8 billion after lawmakers make their additions. And so there's sort of two different categories. We have the spending that gets caught up to between February and May, and then we get all the new spending that comes at the end of June from lawmakers. And it's lawmakers who have the task of writing this annual spending bill. So they're adding hundreds of millions of dollars to fund their priorities, which range from restoring some of the cuts Murphy had proposed to more parochial items in communities like parks and community centers. Money that goes outside of the typical funding formulas or more stringent rules that we typically see when these communities or groups have to apply to government and have some sort of a grant program with a scoring system.
Right.
This way lawmakers can just do an end run around those types of rules and get the money right out. State taxpayers pay for it, but typically they are for parochial interests.
So the way you score it, it's about another $420 million that lawmakers added on top of that mid-May change that had about $300 million. All of this is to say, we heard from a number of Republicans yesterday who were quite upset both with the process that has been the process for many years, but also just how big, this is the biggest spending bill ever in state history.
Yeah, so only things got added.
Right.
And it creates a bigger gap. So New Jersey for the last few years has been spending more on an annual basis than it's taking in revenues. And the gap in this new budget is now about $1.5 billion. So that's a concern that we heard raised. Also a concern is a lot of this new spending came within a matter of days with little time to understand the justification for it. So we had months of scrutiny of the governor's proposed budget going back to his late February budget address. And then we have just a few days to try and wrap our minds around hundreds of new line items spanning hundreds of millions of dollars in new spending. These could all be very worthy purposes. Some of them could not be. The difference is that the governor's was held up to several months of scrutiny. What the legislature adds at the last minute kind of just gets sped through whether there's scrutiny or not.
Right, although the argument that the budget chair, Paul Sarlo, made yesterday was, well, this is all after taking the input of hours and hours of testimony in public hearings. This is directly what the taxpayers told us they want.
Right, and some of the testimony reversing cuts, that's absolutely the case. I don't remember people coming and advocating for some of the specific parochial projects that we saw funded in the final version of the budget.
Yeah, right. $7.5 million maybe for capital projects for Little Ferry schools as an example. Cranford Community Pool is another. Let me just ask you, because as we sit here, the United States Senate has advanced the president's big, beautiful bill. We're expecting a vote in the Assembly, in the House. All this is to say that these cuts that we've been anticipating are likely coming to New Jersey. How does this budget account for that? And what does it say about Governor Murphy's sort of spending legacy?
It accounts for it in a sense because they made a big effort to protect the state surplus, which is money that you have on the sidelines when you have an unexpected expenditure need or a big drop off in revenue. The big question this forces state policymakers to confront is, do we use these state resources to continue benefits at the same level in New Jersey, even if the federal government is not going to be a partner in funding those benefits in the way it has been in the past? Or do we say to people in New Jersey, sorry, we have to protect some of these resources and benefits are just going to change? And that could mean things like more crowded urgent cares, more crowded emergency rooms, because a lot of people who've been receiving health benefits in a certain way may no longer. So that's a really big question that state policymakers now have to confront. As for the governor, I mean, I think his legacy, he hasn't been afraid to spend, he hasn't been afraid to tax. At the same time, he has worked to buttress the surplus. He has prioritized full funding of the state's pension obligation, which goes all the way back to a report Murphy wrote well before he was governor in 2005 on state employee benefits that said the number one priority was no more pension funding holidays.
Yeah, that was Dick Cody's panel there. John Reitmeyer, you can read all of John's budget reporting on our website, njspotlightnews.org. John, thanks for coming in.
You're welcome.
Under the Dome is made possible in part by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, a private corporation funded by the American people.